Ho ho ho! Holy crap, I completely missed the Christmas deadline. Oh, yeah. But you know what? If capitalism and Hot Topic have taught me anything at all, it's that Halloween-miss comes all year round. So, in celebration of really whatever we feel like, let's play The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge.
Boys and girls of every age, would you like to see something strange? Come with us and you will see this our town of Halloween. This is Halloween, this is Halloween, pumpkins screaming.
So last year I took a look at The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Pumpkin King on the GBA. Man, look at that cover. Still awesome. It's a fun little Metroidvania game that was actually a prequel to the movie, meaning that it had nothing to do with Christmas. Like, at all. Whoops. Yeah, I'm not that good at planning these things out, am I? But fear not, for Oogie's Revenge, assuming the title didn't completely give it away, takes place after the movie, and can be considered the actual sequel. Come on, we can go further than that. Into the rabbit hole.
Moral of the story? Never. Ever add Kingdom Hearts to the canon of your franchise. It will be a disaster.
So our story begins pretty close to how it did in the movie, with Halloween coming to a close, and Jack, being the political figurehead that he is, lying to his people about how it was the best Halloween ever. The best. But having actually learned his lesson from the previous year in the film, Jack decides to try and go search for new inspiration elsewhere, in Halloween world presumably, in hopes of rejuvenating the holiday. Poor guy has a serious case of burnout. And after a quick pit stop at the doctor's workshop to pick up our main gameplay MacGuffin, Jack is off. But when the Pumpkin King is away, the baddies will play. And Prick, Pratt, and Pain in the Ass here decided to use the opportunity to resurrect Oogie Boogie. Which, props to them. It had to be pretty tough after last Christmas when old Saint Nick decided to put his foot down. Unfortunately for Jack, though, when he finally returns to Halloween Town, on Christmas Eve no less, he not only finds that Oogie has taken over, but that a bag of bugs intends to take over all of the holidays. And, you know, at least the important ones. Like Turkey Day, or Forever Alone Day. Blow up part of your country with sparkly lights Day. And most important of all, National Talk Like a Pirate Day. Arrgh. And let's be real here, we could not go on as a society without that. But thankfully, we have the true Pumpkin King here to stop him. Though, I guess if it makes him feel better, Oogie can have National Toothache Day. Why is that a thing? And as far as sequel plots go, this is a great setup. It's already got a much bigger scope than the movie did, and instead of Oogie just being an obstacle in Jack's way of redeeming himself, this time, he's the main problem driving the story. I like it, it really works for a video game adaptation. But what I really like is how the musical side of the franchise is fully embraced here, despite being a video game. Yeah, let's take a step back and rewind for a moment. Think back to some of your favorite Disney classics. I bet a lot of them had a surprising amount of singing in them. Some that you just couldn't escape no matter where you went. Except for in video games. Really, how many games actually followed suit? Just one, to my knowledge.
Swing the swing, we'll dance and we'll play. Now it's very easy, come on and just take a chance.
And it sucked!
Now, Oogie's Revenge still follows the standard music and gaming setup, of course, with solid tunes playing in the background as you explore. And when enemies attack, the battle theme is actually "This Is Halloween" from the movie, which you would think would get old, but it doesn't. That song is still so much fun. However, where the music really shines is in the boss battles. First, in major fights, Jack can collect musical notes as drops in the fights, and when he's collected enough, it initiates a QTE dance number for dealing out some extra free damage. So that's already fitting, but the real draw is that the characters are actually singing their dialogue, just like in any great Disney flick. And yes, they got a few of the original voice actors to reprise their iconic roles from the movie, and a few of the actors are from Kingdom Hearts as well. Compounding on that, the songs are all reworks from The Nightmare Before Christmas, so they actually sound pretty good. Now of course, I would have liked to have had some new numbers too, but I'm kind of skeptical about how that would have turned out. So I'm pretty pleased with what we got.
Jack! Finally made it, oh, I waited.
And man, does Oogie's Revenge really know how to put on a show, because this game looks incredibly repulsive. It's wonderful. Even today, the design and stylization that is synonymous with The Nightmare Before Christmas blends flawlessly with the limitations in the gaming space. There were genuinely times when I forgot that this game was 2 console cycles old. The warped and sharply twisting and turning designs in the environment and on the characters completely mask the jagged edges we're used to seeing in the time period. And even ignoring that, Oogie's Revenge fully captures that frighteningly fun atmosphere that the movie is known for. It makes exploring the world a real treat. A quick disclaimer though, I need to mention that I'm playing the Xbox version with an HDMI adapter for cleaner results. So just a heads up, no tricks here. Now I, like many, really enjoy getting to see Halloween Town in all its glory. But I also wish that the game would have taken us to other holiday worlds outside of Halloween Town and Christmas Town, so we could have seen their interpretations. The fact that the other holiday leaders are in bags that we can't open is just a tease too. But where the game is lacking in other worlds, it makes up for in just how much more we actually get to see of Halloween Town, because this place is huge. You think you got to explore it in Kingdom Hearts? Just you wait. From the town square to the forest, the slums, yeah, Halloween Town has slums, and even to the junkyard. The game's rendition of Halloween Town feels like it could fit right into the movie. And where I really want to bring some special attention to is Oogie's lair itself. Tell me, how many games have you played that have some iteration of the traditional lava level? Now tell me, how many of them are combined with a casino? This is easily one of the most unique and dreadfully amazing takes on the concept I have ever seen, and does the series proud. But that's not to say there aren't a few problems springing up here and there. Surprisingly, a lot of the game's issues can actually be tied to just one button. Okay, it's more like one analog stick, but semantics. So then you're probably wondering what that problem is. Well, simply put, it doesn't do anything. Like, at all. Nothing is mapped to it. Like the camera, for example. Definitely one of the smaller, but still important sore spots of the game is the camera angles. It's that type that's pretty much based on where you're positioned in the world, and will change pretty sharply without warning as you move. Obviously, plenty of games have this, and it isn't that big a deal, but there are plenty of segments where the enemies will just be throwing stuff at you, usually their own body parts, from off screen, resulting in some pretty cheap hits. Plus, it can make it kind of difficult to judge whether or not an enemy is close enough for your whip to reach it or not, which is pretty frustrating. Also, there are other times in the game where you have to search for lost characters and items. And man, would it have been nice to have the ability to rotate the camera to look around. I wasted 20 minutes searching for an item just because the camera hid it from view until I got just close enough to have it change angles. 20 minutes to find a shiny object that was out in the open. Seriously. Also, with such an impressively repulsive game, why would I not want to be able to really look around? But actually, it's really the combat itself that suffers the most from having nothing mapped to the right analog stick. Though we need to discuss the overall gameplay first to better understand why. Oogie's Revenge is divided up into over 20 levels with varying objectives, like finding objects. There are a few platforming-ish segments, but for the most part, a lot of your time is going to be spent pounding ghosts and ghoulies by the slayful. It falls mostly into the category of standard third-person action brawler, and being published by Capcom, makers of Devil May Cry, there can be some high expectations here, but the results actually come off as more of a DMC for kids. And with a few similarities, who could really blame you for making that comparison? And keep in mind, that's not a bad thing. Enemy difficulty and variety actually scale pretty nicely with increasing numbers of varying styles of attackers. But the problem is that our favorite skeleton doesn't. First and foremost, despite being a third-person action game, Jack can't jump. Instead, he's got more of an elegant dodge, which absolutely fits his character and looks cool to boot. But it also means he's got no jump attacks, leaving our hero with an even more limited moveset. Jack's main means of attack in this game is the Soul Stealer, that green whip-like weapon I mentioned earlier that is kind of just given to Jack because it's cool. With it, you have a basic combo, a spin, a throw, and a slamming move. And that's about it for the entire game. And this one isn't exactly short. But to be fair, Jack does have two other forms with their own sets of moves as well. His Pumpkin King form that uses a flamethrower and an explosion attack, right up my alley, but it's also one of those moves that uses up fuel. And since you need fire to burn your way through some puzzles, I tended to use it sparingly. Especially after I ran out right before a puzzle, and then I had to run all the way back to the shop just to replenish, and then run all the way back. But of course, it just wouldn't be the Nightmare Before Christmas, or Keeping in with the Season, if we didn't have Sandy Claus Jack, who can throw down presents to surprise foes to weaken them or freeze them. But I'll be honest, these gifts had me scrounging around for the receipt, because these presents take so long to trigger, and using them to set up the field is more hassle than it's worth. So I rarely, if ever, use them. And mainly, they're just there for dealing with the most annoying enemies in the game. These guys that just hold up in crates, and pumpkins, and trash cans. How fitting. And then they just pop out and cheap shot you. They're lame. So really, I just tended to follow the sacred teachings of the Belmont clan and just stick to my trusty whip for most confrontations. But I think more variety and combo options would have gone a long way, and is one of the few things that really holds this game back. But again, the main issue is that analog stick. It really needed to be able to be used to control the lock-on, since the combat heavily relies on it. And though you can turn the lock-on off, I wouldn't recommend it. Switching between foes can be finicky and will absolutely result in you taking more hits than you really should have, thus breaking up a lot of your combos. Especially in areas where the camera clearly wants to see you dead too. And while still technically a minor issue, when stacked with the other problems, we start to see a combat system that is pretty rough around the edges. But with as much health as this game gives you, it's not really a deal breaker. Plus, the combat is still pretty easy, probably being more geared towards younger children. But for what it's worth, the combat is still pretty enjoyable for what it is. Whipping up long and easy combo chains is actually pretty fun, and I just really like slamming foes against the dirt. Again, and again, and again, and again! It soothes the soul. But I'd still argue that the combat is probably the game's weakest area. But even so, I'd still recommend it. It barely took an hour of play to see what type of game this really is. It's one of those simple but fun games that most of us grew up with and look back at fondly. It's one of those games that you probably got on the cheap or as a gift at just the right age where the difficulty wasn't too frustrating, but wasn't too easy either, and had just enough replayability that you didn't get tired with multiple playthroughs trying to go for that A or S rankings. Looking at it today, the combat is probably too simple for a single player experience, and far too repetitive for such a long game. Honestly, some of these stages really should have ended up on the cutting room floor. Looking at you, Forest Stages. And if we were just looking at that in its own bubble, then I'd say, yeah, it's a pretty average title for the time, and even today. But it's the presentation that really sets it apart. The story alone is enough to recommend Oogie's Revenge to any and all Nightmare Before Christmas fans, as it really is the true sequel to the movie. But the game itself is also worth checking out for just how well it brings the world of the film to life, and especially the way it pulls off the musical aspects. That's just going above and beyond the Call of Duty there, making it easily one of the greats in a handful of great license-based games, and a borderline hidden gem, though not quite there, but close. If you're a Nightmare Before Christmas fan, or a younger gamer, or just have kids who love games, a casual gamer who enjoys action titles, or you just really enjoy fun music and gothic scenery in your games, then the Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, is worth checking out, and a solid stocking stuffer.
It's time you three learned all games must come to an end. Especially this one.